I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is UN Insider.
Coming up,
the world has collectively spoken that this carnage and wanton destruction must end immediately.
the conflict between Israel and Hamas reaches another grim milestone. Calls for change on the ground and in the halls of the United Nations.
The humanitarian situation is still concerning, awful and unacceptable.
Providing help for Haiti, efforts to ease the humanitarian crisis in the Caribbean nation.
Approximately 25% of the population in small island developing states are disaster-affected people.
Weathering the impacts of climate change. As extreme events become more frequent, how can countries, big and small, reduce the risk of disaster? Next.
The fighting between Israel and Hamas reached a grim milestone this week. 6 months of violence, bloodshed, and suffering. Dozens of Israeli hostages remain missing. Much of Gaza lies in ruins. More than 1 million have been displaced. More than 33,000 have been killed inside the enclave, according to Gaza's health ministry. And nearly 200 aid workers have also lost their lives.
No one, I repeat, no one should need to swim to retrieve food while food convoys are lined up outside the gate, waiting to be let in. No one should ever know the hell of being kidnapped indefinitely, and no family to the anguish of waiting for news of their fate. No humanitarian worker should ever be the target of an airstrike, most outrageously in an area meant for safe passage.
Calls for a ceasefire and increased humanitarian access grow louder. And the state of Palestine is renewing a push for full UN membership. Jody Jacobs reports.
It was the only thing on the agenda in both the General Assembly and the Security Council on Monday, Palestine's application for full membership at the United Nations.
You want us to be a full member like you, sit with you. You would welcome that. An overwhelming majority of members have repeatedly expressed support for Palestine's full membership as an integral part of their support for our independence.
But in response, Israel says it will not support such a move. Its ambassador lambasting the United Nations for not adequately condemning Hamas or holding it to account for its actions on October the 7th.
The Security Council is deliberating granting the perpetrators and supporters of October 7th full membership status in the UN. We just heard it. The very fact that this discussion is even being held is already a victory for genocidal terror.
At the Security Council, a decision was taken to refer the application to its admissions committee. The matter will be debated and discussed behind closed doors. Following this, the committee can recommend Palestine's admission, or it could put it to a vote.
The essence of the Palestinian-Israeli issue is that the two-state solution has not been realized. China supports Palestine in becoming a full-fledged member of the United Nations. Palestine has requested the Security Council resume consideration of its application, and China supports a swift action by the Council on this matter.
Russia insists that no time must be wasted and the matter must be resolved within a limited time.
Limited time is within, say, days or a week or two, perhaps. We are not planning to allow to drag the issue indefinitely, like perhaps some members of the Council wish.
Palestine last applied for full membership to the United Nations back in 2011, but without adequate support, the matter never came before the Security Council for a vote. As was the case then, It is the United States which is seen as the biggest obstacle to Palestine's membership, with its veto power. It argues that full membership should only come for Palestine after it's negotiated a comprehensive peace agreement with Israel. Jody Jacobs, CGTN, New York.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is among the officials condemning Ecuador's raid on Mexico's embassy in Quito. Officers stormed the embassy to arrest former Ecuadorian Vice President Jorge Glass. Glass had been living at the embassy since seeking asylum there late last year. Mexico severed ties with Ecuador after the raid and has raised the issue with the International Court of Justice at The Hague. Haiti faces an uncertain future. The Caribbean nation has endured months of chaos and violence, and the powerful gangs are still in control of large parts of the country. And the country's health system faces a mounting list of challenges. Harold Isaac has the details.
While violence spirals out of control in Haiti and a hunger crisis worsens, humanitarian workers remain steadfast. But for how long? Gangs reportedly control some 90% of Port-au-Prince. Getting basic supplies to the people in need is not easy, and many fear that unless security is restored, the situation could collapse even further, and the little aid that is getting through will stop.
Depending on the reality and accessing the area to allow for our team to stay safe and alive, to serve the kids and continue to protect and accompany them, for the plumbing not to make it to them on time, so that the nurses can follow their evolution and continue to do screening in order to really accompany those kids in their community.
The situation in Haiti remains very fragile. Access to the main general hospital of the country is cut off due to gang violence. As per a report from UNICEF, from March 2024, 1.1 million women and children are in need of nutrition assistance. More than 125,000 children are expected to suffer from acute malnutrition, and 1 in 4 children from chronic malnutrition.
The Organization of Hearts for Change for Deprived Children of Haiti, a partner of UNICEF, is training people in a challenging environment. Day in and day out, these workers are committed to making a difference, especially for women and children.
It's the accompaniment of those children, especially those in the most difficult neighborhoods, that are the most vulnerable, because when they fall victims, they are most likely to be weaponized and likely to end up turning into what we are seeing today, which is not good for anybody.
With the main port and international airport largely closed, the demand for nutrition and health care remains a challenge. Harold Isaac, CGTN, Port-au-Prince.
Abdoulaye Sawadogu is head of the office for the UN's Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Haiti. And I spoke with him from his location in Haiti about the situation on the ground. Well, we know the situation continues to worsen. More than 5 million Haitians, mostly children, are dependent on humanitarian aid. 44% of the population is facing food insecurity, and more than 1.6 million people are on the brink of famine. So we know that the UN is providing food and aid, but there is concern about replenishing those supplies. What are the most urgent challenges?
As you know, the humanitarian situation is still concerning, awful and unacceptable. We are facing a number of challenges. As you know, the road from Port-au-Prince into Port-au-Prince has been blocked for 2 years now, and it's very difficult. But we are still managing to bring some of the assistance, through the maritime route and also through air. I think that is very important to notice. Okay, despite of the challenges, we are managing to transport the humanitarian assistance in country and also in other departments.
An estimated 1 in 4 children are suffering from malnutrition. Schools there are closed, and there are reports of children being recruited by gangs. So how is this crisis impacting Haiti's future generations?
Children and women are paying the high price for that violence. And what is very important is what is behind what is visible. You know, the trauma, the psychological situation of those children. I think it's very important to make sure that we provide all of the assistance to those children. According to the UNICEF, we have about 3 million people, 3 million children who are in the need of the humanitarian assistance. We are doing everything we can do. We have UN agencies working with the Ministry of Education to make sure that they can provide, even at this difficult time, they can provide education to those children. We are trying to also to make sure that we provide any psychological assistance to those children, because leaving them at it is now, leaving them at this situation, you also increase the risk for the children to be exploited and also to be enrolled by the gangs group.
So tell us more about the OCHA's role there in Haiti and what you're dealing with right now.
We are supporting the entire humanitarian system in the country in close collaboration with the government to make sure that we have a coordinated and principled humanitarian assistance. That is very important. And also we are sustaining, advocacy regarding the access, to make sure that the humanitarian actor have a free access to any area to be able to assist those people in those areas. As you know, the humanitarian plan is currently funded at 7%, which is very, very low, And we are supporting all collective efforts in the country to make sure that, international community can continue to support the humanitarian operation in Haiti. We are grateful for the donors who are already supporting the operation in Haiti.
You mentioned the displaced population. We know that the healthcare system there has also been stressed very much. Can you talk to us a little bit about the fear of outbreaks and disease, like with cholera, and the stress that the medical system is taking?
According to WHO, less than 50% of the health facility in Port-au-Prince are operational, because a lot of them has been attacked, a lot of them has been looted, which is not acceptable. But the WHO and the Ministry of Health and some of the health partners, including MSF, they are doing what they can, to support those health facilities, even to make sure that some of them who has been closed can resume their activity. We have IDPs in a crowded site, and we need to make sure that they are getting basic services. Otherwise, we face some risk of, some of the disease. But we are doing everything we can to make sure that they are providing water, they are provided with health services, and we have some the mobile clinics who are providing health service to those IDPs in the different sites in Port-au-Prince. That is very important. But as you say, we need to make sure that to prevent any epidemics in the country, and especially in Port-au-Prince.
Abdoulaye Sawadogo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Coming up.
We don't want to lose our culture. We don't want to lose our land. We don't want to lose our people. And that's why we are fighting no matter what. We're trying our very best to save Tuvalu.
UN Insider.
Making sense of the overwhelming wave of information means cutting through the noise to shine a light on the heart of the story and making room for new perspectives. True understanding means the ability to see events from more than one side. I'm Liu Xin, and this is The Point.
Climate change impacts every nation on Earth, but in some places, the effects are magnified. The South Pacific is home to some of the most vulnerable countries on the planet, places like Tuvalu. That island nation is sinking as sea levels rise and storms intensify. Mirlu gives us a look at the fight to save Tuvalu.
If you've ever heard of Tuvalu, chances are you've heard that it's sinking. For more than a decade, Tuvalu has been sounding the alarm over rising sea levels and planning for the worst, the total inundation of the country. But even as they plan for the worst, the country has embarked on an ambitious climate adaptation plan that could potentially change what we think is possible, not just here, but in other low-lying countries. Ellen Rescher is the director of the Tuvalu Coastal Adaptation Project, or TCAP. Launched in 2017 with funding from the Green Climate Fund and the government of Tuvalu, TCAP is focused on improving coastal protection in key locations on 3 of Tuvalu's islands, including here in the capital, Funafuti.
We don't want to lose our culture. We don't want to lose our land. We don't want to lose our people. And that's why we are fighting no matter what. We're trying our very best to save Tuvalu.
The majority of Tuvalu's population lives less than 2 meters above sea level, and they've already seen the dangers firsthand. In 2015, storm waves from Cyclone Pam caused $10.34 million in damages, over a third of the country's GDP at the time, and displaced 45% of the population. TCAP's work is visible everywhere. The 7.3 hectare section of land behind me has been built up from the ground up using sand brought in from the island's lagoon and is now 2 meters above the highest astronomical tide. This can serve as a safe location from flooding in the event of a cyclone or storm surge.
The reclaimed land will be not only protecting communities from the sea and the rising, it is also being used for the limited land that we have. So it's for development purposes, shopping, housing, and recreation. So it's going to be put into good use.
The plan is about much more than short-term solutions, though.
The government has a long-term adaptation plan. It's about, I think it's about 33 square kilometers of additional land. Yeah? So the whole of Tuvalu population can be accommodated on this new land, while other people are moving away to Australia, New Zealand. Some still remain. This is their Tuvalu. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here.
That's good news for locals. While many appreciate offers from neighbors like Australia to resettle climate refugees permanently, like the saying goes, there's no place like home.
Tuvalu is the only place I grew up, and I really love staying here. I still want to stay here in Tuvalu.
Mirulu for CGTN in Funafuti, Tuvalu.
The increasing threat of climate disasters is one of the key concerns for the UN's Office of Disaster Risk Reduction. As the UN prepares to host its first ever Sustainability Week, I sat down with Tony Shea Freckleton, chief of the UNDRR's New York Liaison Office. Ms. Freckleton, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
In South America, we're seeing landslides in the Caribbean, hurricanes, drought in other parts of the world, and the pace is not slowing down, it's only increasing. What do you consider the biggest disaster risks at the moment, and what is being done to reduce them and prevent them?
The biggest disaster risks are those that are related to climate, and these are not withstanding other risks related to biological and technological hazards. We're seeing how disasters really are upending development across many countries. What we are trying to do as an organization is to work with countries to strengthen their strategies, disaster risk reduction strategies, particularly in ensuring that there is integration with climate change adaptation strategies. We know that with effective early warning systems in countries, we can have early action and kind of an end-to-end approach where we are increasing the knowledge and understanding of the risk profiles of countries, how we're going about monitoring and forecasting, getting the right technology to support countries to make relevant predictions and analysis around weather events, and then taking it to the level on the ground where we're reaching and communicating with communities to ensure that they are responding.
As we know, small island nations are on the front line of climate change. What are they experiencing, and how do large countries actually contribute to their challenges?
As a result of these climate-related disasters, we're seeing increase in drought, sea level rise. Climate change is impacting human health and the incidence of vector-borne diseases as well as heat-related diseases. We're seeing increased incidence of heat waves. So these are some of kind of the experiences that small island developing states are having. Approximately 25% of the population in small island developing states are disaster-affected people. SIDS and the data has shown that they are accountable for just about 1% of global greenhouse gases, yet they are the ones that are facing the brunt of climate change.
How can small island nations balance growth and development, and also the loss caused by climate? Can they actually afford to invest in prevention?
It really is indeed a balancing act for these countries. I think there is a kind of multi-pronged approach that would be required for countries, small countries, to be able to balance the development and investing in disaster risk reduction. And I think while it is a difficult policy decision to invest in prevention, the return on investment is actually much greater, because we're seeing that for every $1 invested in resilience and in prevention, there is a $6, return on averted losses. So this is it requires a change in mindset in terms of how we look at the spectrum of disaster risk reduction and where countries invest those resources.
You're from Jamaica. No doubt you have seen and witnessed all the changes over the years. What have you experienced?
Only recently, a few months ago, a cold front on the island totally damaged several of the tourism infrastructure as a result of wave action. The sea pretty much, we, as we would say in Jamaica, reclaiming sections of the land, and this we're seeing how it's impacting infrastructure in the tourism sector. I've also grown to see, of course, improvements, because as a child, when Hurricane Gilbert hit Jamaica in 1988, we had total shutdown in the country. Critical infrastructure severely impacted, but over time I think the country has invested quite a bit in resilient infrastructure and just building resilience in general.
China and Jamaica have agreed to cooperate when it comes to climate and development. Is that one way of attacking the issue of climate change? Larger countries and smaller countries working together?
Yes, that is indeed quite critical, because the focus on not just bilateral but multilateral cooperation is really going to be the crux of what is going to strengthen the resilience of countries. There's so much that countries can learn, peer-to-peer learning in terms of the policies, the investments and mechanisms that are put in place for disaster risk reduction. And I think given the experience that China has had over time, and also, sharing technology and capacity in technology are critical support to countries like Jamaica, being able to share innovative approaches, mechanisms, and cooperation across a wide spectrum.
Ms. Toni Shea Freckleton, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Coming up.
We have the biggest percent of new EVs on the annual market, not only in Latin America, but also Canada and the United States.
UN Insider.
No war, no one against holding guns against companies words protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Electric vehicles are growing more popular around the world. In the Americas, Costa Rica is among the countries experiencing a surge in EV sales. Now the country is looking to transform its public transportation network as it strives for carbon neutrality.
E-mobility promoter Silvia Rojas wants to turn San Jose's loud and busy streets into a green tech paradise.
I love this EV because it's like you're going and there is no noise, you know, it's beautiful.
Last year, 12% of new cars sold in Costa Rica were all electric vehicles, making the country the green mobility leader in the Americas.
We have the biggest percent of new EVs on the annual market, not only in Latin America, but also Canada and United States. We are taking almost the half of the new electric cars here in Costa Rica were from China.
The dominance of Chinese brands didn't go unnoticed by Federico Rodriguez, who opened the country's first EV repair shop 6 years ago. With China's help, Costa Rica transformed its private sector. Now it's time for the public one, he says.
This car, it's okay, but it's not enough. We need to change to public transportation. And we need the Chinese buses and the Chinese technology because it's cheap, good, and accessible for everybody.
Currently, Costa Rica only has one passenger train line and runs basically all of its public transport on fossil fuels. China is trying to boost emission-free public transport in Costa Rica by donating electric buses and offering financial help for a much-needed electric train network. It will still take years for the country to decarbonize this sector, but time is running out. While transport continues to be Costa Rica's biggest source of emissions, the country pledged to reach net zero by 2050.
For me, 2050 is a good date. It's a date that is going to be possible because until this point, we have enough information to guarantee that the transition is possible.
Others are less optimistic. A new train system proposed by the former government was cancelled when the opposition came to power.
What we can see by the government is like they're having projects, but when they changed the authorities, we lost the work done.
The new government is now considering a 39-kilometer monorail network, partly funded by a Chinese state company. This could be a major turning point for public transportation in Costa Rica. Johannes Blechberger, CGTN, San Jose.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN insider.